Hello and welcome to a brand new series of videos that I'll be putting out this week where I break down every fight taking place on UFC on ESPN +4 from a betting perspective. Now hopefully you were able to make money from my videos last week. I believe if you were to follow my advice in the majority of positions you would have made some cash, and hopefully I can help you earn more cash this weekend, because this week is another big week for MMA betting and another opportunity to punch the bookies in the dick. So last week the two bets that I ended up settling on in the end were quite a big bet on Diego Sanchez. Well, actually not quite a big bet. It was only 2 units, but did end up being a big cash winner for me. I did earn a lot of money off Diego Sanchez. And then a 1 unit gamble on Misha Cirkunov when his odds basically became irresistible to me. All week I kind of wanted to bet on Cirkunov, but at the same time there was such a big risk of him getting death shotted by Johnny Walker that I wanted to squeeze as much value out of that bet as possible. And in the couple of hours leading up to the event, his odds just became basically unpassable at odds of 2.60, given the way both guys matched up, given how bad Walker is on the ground. So I took a gamble on Cirkunov, and he obviously got killed very quickly. But luckily for me, Diego came through big time, and I bet him around about this time last week when he was a very big underdog of 3.80. Also doubled up my stake on Diego, bet double the amount on Diego that I bet on Misha. So it was a very nice profit overall, and a very nice weekend. Live betting, really weren't that many opportunities to live bet at all, so I completely passed on live betting, but hopefully this weekend will be much better. So this weekend I want to make another profit this weekend, because making big money in betting is all about racking up wins and compounding money and compounding profits. So this week I'm hoping that we will be able to find some really good betting opportunities, but I also want to recommend that you exercise extreme caution on this event, because UFC on ESPN +4 takes place in Wichita, which is in Kansas, and historically the judges that the Kansas State Athletic Commission put up, or whatever athletic commission governs the events in Canada, historically, the judges in Kansas are absolutely appallingly bad. They are terrible. So my recommendation to you would be, do not bet any fighters this weekend unless you think they can dominate to the point where it would be impossible that the judges screw it up, or unless you think they can get a finish, because you cannot trust Kansas judges. They are appalling. Bellator hosts a lot of events in Kansas, and we just see some crazy decisions from this commission. So proceed with caution, guys. Don't put too much money on the table. This is definitely one of those events where you need to be careful. Now, like every event, or every week, sorry, since I've been doing this, if every video that I put out this week gets 50 likes, I will do a bonus live stream on Saturday where I will be answering all your questions about the fights taking place this weekend, as well as trying to find decent value prop bets for every fight. So a prop bet, like I always say, is one of these bets where you can bet on highly specific things. For example, Dariush to win by decision, or, you know, a lot more likely possibly Lewis to win inside the distance by an absolute nuclear bomb that would land on Junior Dos Santos' chin. But we're covering that fight today, so we'll get into that in a little bit. Yeah, so hit the like button below, guys. Smash the subscribe button as well to help the channel grow. And let's jump into these fights. Oh, also one more thing. I am getting better at this YouTube thing, and I've now learned how to schedule live streams in. So if you missed the one last weekend, it was literally because I only managed to figure out how I could actually schedule stuff like 10 minutes before I had to do the live stream anyway. What I will do this week is on Friday I will announce what time we're going to do the live stream on Saturday, and I will share that in like the final part of this series of videos, so that you know what time to be online for the live stream, to get your questions in, to look at the prop bets, all that kind of good stuff. But let's jump into the first fight. So the first fight that I want to talk about today is Ben Rothwell versus Blagoy Ivanov, and straight away I just want to put it out there that if you read anyone online or in any videos or hear anyone say that they think Ben Rothwell's a good bet for this fight, just ignore them. In the nicest way possible, ignore them. Because I have heard a few people on about betting Rothwell, and to me it is crazy talk given the circumstances. So let's get right into it. This is a tricky fight to call because we have absolutely no idea what version of Ben Rothwell we're going to get. And chances are Rothwell has absolutely no idea how he's going to perform this weekend either. You know, if we look at it, he hasn't fought for 3 years. Hasn't fought since April 2016 because he's been suspended by USADA, which means he's now 37 years old. And as we know, when on average, when a male athlete reaches the age of 33, every year after that, their testosterone levels naturally decline, and therefore they go on a natural decline in what they can do athletically. Now, heavyweights do peak a little bit later on, but at the same time, it's fair to make the assumption with all the issues that have been going on with Rothwell that it's very possible that he has built his entire career on PED usage. I mean, if we look at the most recent issue that he's had with USADA, he was suspended by 2 years for basically use of an anabolic steroid. But more worryingly than that, the reason why he got a 2-year suspension was because he had previously been suspended by the Wisconsin Athletic Commission for having elevated levels of testosterone, and this was back in 2013. So this is not Rothwell's first run-in with PED usage. And even more worryingly than that, Ben Rothwell was given a TRT exemption back in 2013. So he was a testosterone replacement therapy user. And as we know, TRT was basically a therapy used by fighters who you can't say that they'd had a history of using steroids. Basically, the general opinion on TRT use is when a fighter would take steroids and PEDs for any prolonged period of time, that would then destroy the fighter's ability to make their own testosterone, which means they'd have naturally low levels of testosterone in their body. So then they would go to a doctor, get the TRT therapy to help boost their body's testosterone levels, because they had basically burned out their endocrine system and their own body couldn't produce adequate levels of testosterone anymore. You know, we saw with guys like Vitor Belfort what happened when he had to come off TRT, and obviously it's a big deal. I mean, I don't know if I can find it here, but we'll try and find the picture of Vitor Belfort before and after. He had to stop using TRT. Sorry guys, I should have got this up earlier, but you could take a look at it here. It's absolute craziness, the difference. You know, this was Vitor Belfort when he was on TRT before USADA came into effect. This was Vitor Belfort after TRT, when he could no longer use it because USADA deemed it illegal under the new rules, under the new drug testing protocols. So straight away, if you hear anyone say that they think Rothwell's a good bet, just ignore them, because there's absolutely no way we could tell how he's going to look on Saturday night. Like I say, to summarise, he's been banned twice on 2 separate occasions for PED usage. He's also used TRT in the past, which suggests he's got a long history of using performance-enhancing drugs, which means it's likely he's built his entire career on using performance-enhancing drugs. So it is very likely that he looks an absolute shadow of himself on Saturday night against Blagoy Ivanov. And now at 37 years old, I get it, heavyweights do tend to peak later, but there aren't many 37-year-old fighters in the world still competing at a high level for a reason. At the end of the day, Father Time catches up with everyone. Now, if Rothwell did show up and perform like he did back in 2016 against Junior Dos Santos, remember he was suspended by USADA for 2 years after this fight. You know, if he did show up and perform like that, I do think he would have a great chance of beating Blagoy Ivanov. But like I say, at the moment, Rothwell is a completely new entity. When you're researching this fight, you should treat Rothwell like a completely new fighter that we know nothing about. You know, for all we know, he could have gone on some crazy diet and health kick and come in and look amazing on Saturday. The probability is that he's not going to. The probability is that he's going to look nowhere near as good as he used to. But we don't really know anything about Rothwell at this stage. We have to basically wipe our memory clean and treat him as a completely new fighter on Saturday night. Now, like I say, if he did show up and look similar to how he looked back in 2016, he'd probably beat Ivanov, but I would bet that he does not look as good as that. So from a stylistic point of view, Blagoy Ivanov, Nothing special, to be honest with you. He's only 5'11" with a 73-inch reach, so he's quite small for a heavyweight. Rothwell's obviously massive at 6'4" and an 80-inch reach, so Ivanov should find it hard to get inside and land anything significant. Although, you know, what I would also say is Rothwell is quite a tall guy, but he does keep his head quite stationary and quite static, so he is quite hittable. You know, even that long reach, Rothwell doesn't do a particularly good job of fighting long, so it's possible Ivanov could get inside on him and land some big shots. And like I say, with Rothwell, you have to remember that when a fighter stops using PEDs, it's massive because so many things get affected. You know, their confidence gets affected because, you know, they don't have all this testosterone in their body anymore to give them, I'm not going to say roid rage, but essentially, you know, testosterone is the lifeblood of men, and the less testosterone you have, the more passive, laid back and chilled you are. So confidence is significantly affected when you no longer have high levels of testosterone. Also, cardio is affected. You know, having elevated levels of testosterone makes it easier to train harder in the gym, so you get better cardio coming into a fight. And that's been one of Rothwell's strengths over the years. He's had pretty good cardio for a heavyweight, can fight at a high pace for 3 rounds no problem, which is obviously an issue for a lot of heavyweights. So is Rothwell going to have good cardio anymore now that he's off the PEDs? And also strength, aggression and explosion as well. Rothwell was an aggressive fighter. That was one of his main strengths. He kept coming forward, putting pressure on his opponent. Will he be able to do that anymore? Will he have lost that aggression now that he will probably just be like a mere mortal like the rest of us? Who knows? But what I would say, guys, about this fight is when you look at the odds at the moment, I mean, is there really any point in putting it into the implied probability calculator? The average odds at the moment on Rothwell are around about 2.05, giving him an implied probability of 49%. And Ivanov is current average implied probability of around about 1.77. So giving him a 57% implied probability on those odds. What I would say, guys, there's no reason for you to bet this fight. There really isn't. Look, Rothwell, based on his past performances, should have the cardio and the aggression to walk Ivanov down and outstrike him, be able to use his significant 7-inch reach advantage to outstrike Ivanov. Ivanov, like I say, nothing special. He's going to find it difficult to get inside. But Rothwell has got a good chin. He is very tough. But I'm talking based on Rothwell's past performances, so we just don't know anymore. I just don't see the point in betting this fight, guys. Ivanov's not great, and obviously Rothwell's got a massive size advantage over him. But we don't know what Rothwell's going to bring to the table after so many issues outside the octagon. So I would just say to pass on it, guys. I really don't want to spend too much more time on that. It's a bit of a car crash of a fight. We just have to use this fight as a learning process to see where Rothwell is at in his career after the suspension, after all the PED issues, and then go from there. We'll have more information, hopefully, to assess him for his next fight, just as long as this one doesn't end fast. So, to summarise, I do think Rothwell wins, but that's judging him on his past performances. And we can't trust him to show up and look anything like that. So I would recommend a pass, guys. So the next fight that I want to get into today is Alex White against Dan Moret. And again, sorry to be really boring, but this is a hard fight to cap because there really isn't that much footage available on Moret at all over the last couple of years. To find a lot of footage on him, you have to go way back in his career, which I don't really tend to like to do because obviously, you know, fighters change and evolve and improve all the time. So you don't want to go too far back in time because, you know, they're going to be a completely different person now. So what I have done is I've gone online and I've found the footage of Moret that is available. Unfortunately, the majority of his fights over the last couple of years have been in the RFA and LFA promotion, which sometimes their fights are really, really difficult to find. So I couldn't really find any of these fights, to be honest with you guys. But if you can find these fights online against Darren Adkins, Rony Barcelos, Alex Gilpin and Josh Wick, please let me know. Please let me know in the comments or send me an email or jump in my chat room and let me know, because I do think Moret could be a good bet here, but I just can't bet him because of the unanswered questions I have, because there's just not that much footage available on him. So for example, against Gilbert Burns, his striking did look very sharp, very crisp, very nice. but he got taken down quite easily, which shouldn't really be that big of an issue here against Alex White, because Alex White isn't a grappler at all. Alex White's not very high level on the ground, doesn't really have any wrestling, so you can excuse the fact that his takedown defense looked poor against Burns. But against Alonso Martinez, this fight is available on UFC Fight Pass if you have it. It did show signs that he is quite a slick grappler, because the fight went to the ground in a scramble, and Moret was able to take Martinez's back very, very fast, very, very nice. His rear naked choke win was very slick. So you could tell that he's got an educated ground game, but, you know, literally we're trying to form an opinion based on like 5 or 6 minutes of footage on this guy. And you know what they say, assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups. We have no idea what his chin's like, no idea what his cardio's like, no idea what he's like on the bottom, no idea what he's like if he's put in a bad position. So it's difficult to form a strong opinion on this fight because there are so many unanswered questions over Moret. What I would say is that standing up, I do believe he can hold his own. White has made significant improvements to his striking over the last few years, but again, Moret did look pretty sharp against Gilbert Burns. I was impressed with him. What I would say is both these guys fight out of the southpaw stance, so generally speaking, southpaws tend to look pretty good against orthodox fighters because orthodox fighters are less used to fighting against guys out of the southpaw stance. So southpaws are more used to fighting against guys in the orthodox stance, so they're more comfortable with that striking dynamic. Because on average, if you read the Fightnomics book, there's only around 30% of fighters that are southpaw. So obviously that says the majority of the time fighters are going to be going up against orthodox stance opponents. So what that usually means when you have two southpaws going up against each other is that I would favour the more experienced striker, because obviously they've been around longer, they would have had more experience competing against fellow southpaws. So in this instance, you'd say that the more comfortable, experienced striker would be Alex White, just because he's had more UFC fights. But again, that's a really, really big assumption because we don't really know that much about Dan Moret's background. He might have come from a striking background. He might be very comfortable competing against southpaws. And who knows, he trains at the MMA lab where they may have some really, really good southpaw training partners compared to Alex White that trains at a smaller independent gym called Team Destruction. So like I say, guys, I'm talking and I'm making loads of assumptions, which is the exact reason why, for me, you can't really bet this fight. What I would say is that Alex White has poor takedown defense and he's not very skilled on the ground. So if Dan Moret has any kind of wrestling and looks to take this fight to the ground and he has decent enough cardio to continue to try and take Alex White down for 3 rounds and grind him out, then this should be an easy night's work for Moret. But again, we're making loads of assumptions. Haven't seen Moret use his wrestling in his past fights because there's not a great deal of his past fights available online. But please, if you can find them, let me know. So from a betting perspective, guys, if you are a really, really loose gambler, you know, current odds available on Moret, call it around 2.40. They've declined quite a bit over the last 24 hours, giving him an implied probability of 42% compared to Alex White, who's currently around about, call it, say, a 1.61 favourite, giving him an implied probability of 62%, so it's roughly a 60-40 situation. I mean, you have to kind of agree with it, don't you? You know, White's got a lot more fights, a lot more experience in the UFC. We know a lot more about him, whereas there are a lot of unanswered questions over Moret. I would just pass on this fight, guys, but it's up to you. Like I say, White does have bad takedown defense. He's low level on the ground. There was a slight glimmer that Moret is very, very good on the ground based on his performance against Alonso Martinez. We're making assumptions. So the best thing to do on this is pass. Hopefully these guys go the distance, and hopefully we get to learn a load more about Dan Moret after this fight, so that in the future, in his future fights, we can make much better decisions. So then in the next fight that I want to cover is the main event, probably the one that most people are interested in this card, because there's not that many high profile names or like really, really big fights on this card. But Derek Lewis versus Junior Dos Santos is an exciting fight. And straight away, I want to say that I would really love to bet Junior Dos Santos in this fight. I would. This is one of those fights where it's probably going to be a pass for me, but a reluctant pass. And it's just the reason why it's a reluctant pass is because obviously we know Junior Dos Santos is better than Derek Lewis everywhere. everywhere, no question about it. Significantly better striker, way more technical boxing, and he is light years ahead of Derek Lewis on the ground. I wish the Junior Dos Santos was the kind of guy that we could trust to just come out, take Lewis down, and just dominate him on the ground for 5 rounds, or however long Lewis can last, because Dos Santos is very, very dangerous on the ground. We saw him with his heavy mount in his last fight against Tai Tuivasa. He was able to do a ton of damage from top position against Tuivasa. And if Dos Santos was just the kind of guy to go to his wrestling and ground game, we know this would be an easy night's work for him. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, JDS doesn't fight smart, and you know for a fact he's going to want to get into a kickboxing match with Derek Lewis, which is very, very dangerous. Because let's be honest with you, if I would have been doing these videos for longer, every single time that I would have broken down a Derek Lewis fight, I would have told you that his opponent is significantly better than him everywhere. Lewis, sloppy striking, bad cardio, no takedown defense, super low level ground game. But this geezer just keeps finding a way to win, which is brilliant. Like, if we look at his record, dating back to 2015, he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 2. 9 and 2. And if you look back at the guys he's beaten, Victor Pesta, Damian Grabowski, Gabriel Gonzaga, let's go through one by one. So Victor Pesta, much stronger grappler than him. Much stronger grappler than him. Damian Grabowski, much stronger wrestler than him. Gabriel Gonzaga, light years ahead on the ground. Roy Nelson, again, light years ahead of him on the ground. In fact, Derek Lewis lost pretty much every second of this fight and just landed that uppercut from hell in the 3rd round, which won a split decision for him. Shamil Abdurakhimov better everywhere. Travis Brown's better than Lewis everywhere. Mark Hunt, obviously, the ground game, neither guy particularly great, but he lost this fight, to be fair, so I just skipped that. But again, Marcin Tybura, better than him everywhere. Francis Ngannou, much more technical stand-up. Alexander Volkov, better than him everywhere. So all these fighters are pretty much better than Lewis everywhere from a technical point of view. And he managed to beat all of them because this guy refuses to win. He finds a way to win. He's a natural-born fighter with devastating power in his hands. He's got fucking nuclear warheads in his fists. And that's what makes him so dangerous in this fight, because let's be real, Junior Dos Santos has looked quite fragile over the last couple of years. He does appear to be one of the victims of USADA. He definitely hasn't been the same since the new drug testing protocols come into play. And in his last fight against Tai Tuivasa, he was struggling bad. If you go back and watch this fight, Tuivasa had him trapped against the cage, looking very nervous. Tuivasa was putting him in some very bad positions, and it honestly looked like Tuivasa was about to KO JDS at any point in time. Unfortunately, Tuivasa showed a massive lack of experience and got overconfident and just started chasing after JDS and ran onto a huge, I believe it was a left hand, which dropped him. Tuivasa just got overconfident, cocky, complacent, and JDS punished him for it. But JDS, for, you know, dating back to the Miocic fight, has looked very fragile in his last 3 fights. So, you know, this could be one of those fights where we see JDS dominate the fight because he's way more technical, much better cardio, you know, can throw a much higher volume of strikes per round, much more diverse range of strikes. And Derek Lewis is very predictable, you know, very sloppy with his technique. It should be, you know, Dos Santos should be able to see a shot coming from a mile away. But at the same time, Lewis has only got to land once and it's all over. Dos Santos, after all the wars that he's been in, you know, at his age now, Father Time is starting to catch up with him in a post-USADA UFC. So if we look at the odds at the moment, the best odds, we'll go with the best odds on this at the moment because they are improving. What I would say is people love Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis is one of those guys, a bit like Johnny Walker this past weekend, a bit like Volkan Ozdemir. You know, these kinds of guys that technically aren't very good. They've got huge holes. I'm not going to say technically they're not very good. In some areas, they are very good. Obviously, Johnny Walker's a very explosive striker. Ozdemir obviously hits extremely hard. But the whole package, there's a lot of holes, a hell of a lot of holes. But because these kind of guys have got so many devastating KO wins, the average MMA fan, the casual MMA bettor, they love these guys, and for that reason, whenever they're fighting, you do tend to see a lot of money come in on them, particularly on fight day, which tends to improve the odds on their opponent. We saw it with Serkinov on, last Saturday. Serkinov opened up on the Saturday at around about 2.2. His odds closed at around about 2.50 to 2.60, depending on which betting site you use. And I think we're going to see a similar thing here with Derek Lewis and JDS. People love to bet on Derek Lewis for all his faults and all his weaknesses. He's an explosive, exciting guy with loads of highlight reel knockouts. And your casual MMA fan, your casual MMA bettor that likes to bet a bit of money on the weekend and have fun, they love to bet on guys like Lewis and Ozdemir and Walker. So if we look at the odds at the moment, the odds movement, the way it's going, you can see that JDS opened up at 1.69. The sharp money, the smart money that understands that JDS is better than Lewis everywhere is obviously bet him straight away. The money's come right down to 1.40, and now it's just gradually starting to improve as the casual money starts to come in on Lewis. But what I would expect to see over the next week is I would expect Junior Dos Santos' odds to continue to improve, and they may get as good as 1.60 to 1.70. I would expect Lewis to get bet down probably from around about 2.20 to 2.30, something like that. So there may still be an opportunity to bet on JDS, depending on how good his odds get. But at the moment, with his current odds given an implied probability of around about 67%, to get any real kind of value there, you'd have to cap JDS at 73% or better, which against someone with as devastating finishing power as Derek Lewis is a big, big stretch and a big gamble and a big risk, because we know how dangerous Lewis is. But at the same time, Lewis's current odds are around 2.80, giving him an implied probability of 36%. And this just isn't the kind of bet that I like to place. At the end of the day, every bet is a gamble. Every fight has got multiple different ways that it could play out. And while I could absolutely see Lewis landing a bomb on JDS, it's just not the kind of bet that I like to place. I've said it many times in the past. There are two types of bet that I like and two types of bet you can make money on. The bet which has a lot of risk but a very good payout, the odds are definitely worth the reward, like Diego Sanchez last week. There was a chance Mickey Cole could have improved his striking in the space of a year and flatlined Diego, in the first minute. He had Diego in some bad positions in that first 2 minutes. If things would have gone slightly differently, Gol could have picked up a very early win and everyone would have been calling Sanchez a bum and passed it, whereas now, everyone thinks Sanchez is back or whatever. At the same time, that's the kind of bet that I love. Quite a lot of risk, but then also a very decent reward where the risk is worth reward. And the other kind of bet that I like is where it's the low-hanging fruit. It's the easy winners, where you bet on a fighter that's significantly better than their opponent everywhere. And unless something crazy happens, they should be able to cruise to a win. With this type of bet, I don't feel that Lewis falls into either of those categories. I just don't want to bet on a fighter that I know is second best everywhere. JDS is a significantly better striker, light years ahead of him in grappling. Unless Lewis lands that Hail Mary, that bomb, that flash KO, JDS is going to win. There's no way Lewis is going to win a decision against JDS. He needs a finish. And, another thing Lewis only really has is massive right hand. Aside from that, that's all he brings to the table. But it is a significant threat. So I don't feel comfortable betting JDS as a reasonably big favourite. Although, if his odds improve significantly, I may take a second look at him. And at the same time, I don't want to bet Lewis because just don't like betting on fighters that are second best everywhere, basically. So that is it for these 3 fights, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with another 3 fights. Remember, hit the like button on this video, and if every video that I put out this week gets 50 likes, I'll do that bonus live stream on Saturday where I will answer all your questions. I'll do a live Q&A, and I'll also find some decent value prop bets for all the fights taking place this weekend. And subscribe to the channel and help it grow. And like I say, I'll be back tomorrow with another 3 fights on another video. Thanks for your support, guys. Love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care, guys.